East of the sun and west of the moon, we'll build a dream house of love deep, near to the sun in the day, near to the moon at night.
We're here at the Players Club in New York City, where the United States Postal Service honored Jose Ferrer on a forever stamp. Jose Ferrer is considered one of the most accomplished talents of his generation. He was a Puerto Rican actor as well as a theater and film director. Ferrer won several Tony Awards for his stage work and performed in more than 60 movies, garnering 3 Academy Award nominations. He won both a Tony Award and the Oscar for Best Actor for his role as Cyrano de Bergerac, becoming the first Hispanic to win an Academy Award. Today at the Players Club in New York City, the U.S. Postal Service honored him on a 45-cent forever stamp. And now, let's look in on some of the ceremony.
Jose became a member of this club in 1936. And his membership lasted until his death in 1992, which is an extraordinary length of time for this membership. And he served with great distinction as president from 1983 to 1991, the end of 91. We would talk about everything except acting. You get together with Jose, and he would talk about history, art, women, music, sports, women, dirty jokes, travel, food, women. And it was exhilarating to be in his company. He was not just a generous and very kind and very thoughtful man, but the thing that I think I'll always feel strongly about and remember the most is that he was the funniest man I've ever met in my life. And he was the greatest storyteller. He would tell stories on himself to make a point. He was never shy about that. He was never reticent about that. You know, for example, he'd tell a story, which I'm not going to go into now because it's too long, but basically it was about the time that he went on stage as Cyrano and forgot his nose. And nobody noticed.
I first saw Jose Ferrer from the second balcony playing Iago, and I saw the Shrike, and I saw, it's an infinite number of dazzling Broadway performances and film performances. But my warmest memory, and you'll see why, is of a 18-year-old boy, me, in Philadelphia at the University of Pennsylvania, going down to the Forest Theater to see Cyrano de Bergerac with Jose Ferrer. I was awed, an overused word, but I really was awed. And after the show, I went backstage. The Forest is a very strange theater. It's in 2 parts. Actually, the auditorium and the backstage, and there's a little alley that where the stage entrance was. I stood there, and then I opened the door because there was no Jose Ferrer coming out, and I said to the stage doorman, "Is this where Mr. Ferrer leaves the theater?" And he said, "Yes." Yes, he does. Are you waiting for him? And I said, well, I don't know him, but yes, I'm waiting for him. And he said, well, be patient. He'll be out. So I stood there for a while, and then the door opened, and there he was. And I was a very shy kid. It's not like me to present myself to someone that estimable. And I stepped up and I said, Mr. Ferrer, I just saw your show, and as far as I'm concerned, that's the greatest performance I've ever seen an American actor give. And he said, who are you? And I told him, and I said I was a junior at the University of Pennsylvania, And he said, and what do you want to do? And I said, you know, the corny thing, someday I want to be a director. So I had no more imagination but than to say, someday I want to be a director. And he said, well, then if you really want to be, you will be. He said, do you want to walk me home? And we can talk. And I thought, oh my God, is this happening? And I said, you bet. And so we walked from the forest, not all that great a distance, to the Sylvania Hotel where he was staying. So it's about 4 blocks. He wasn't taking too much of a chance of being bored. But I did ply him with questions, and then when we got to the entrance to the hotel, he said, well, this is where I live. And I said, I can't tell you how thrilling this was. Thank you very much. And he said, do it. You'll do it, and we'll meet again. And we did. And one of the last times we met, we were co-master of ceremonies at George Abbott's 100th birthday in Miami. And yes, he talked about women and a lot of other things, the whole history, because he was my chauffeur. He drove me to and from Indian Creek Club and filled me full of brilliant anecdotes. And so it's nice to know that I was 18 and then I was whatever. But to feel and stand here today and know how generous and kind and inspiring, and that generous, kind, inspiring, and extraordinary talent is being honored by the Postal Service is really something swell. Thank you very much, Postal Service, and thank you all.
I knew Joe and Stella when we did the movie Fedora, which was directed by Billy Wilder and starred really, among the stars was Joe, of course, but William Holden was the main star of it was kind of Sunset Boulevard-ish, kind of. But we did most of the shooting in a little island off Corfu called Lefkas. And it was so warming to my husband and myself because we had brought 4 of our 6 children for this whole shoot, which took up most of the summer. And Joe, of course, was a father of 6 children, and he took to us. He and Stella just took to us, and I mean, there were other so-called stars in this movie, but at the end of our shooting in Lefkas, the unit manager had decided that all the stars would sit at one long table, and the rest of us, sort of peons, would be sprinkled around in the rest of the restaurant, which was all outdoors. And suddenly, William Holden and Joe and Stella and the cameraman came over to our table and said, do you mind if we sit here? And I, of course, said, oh, please. The children were thrilled. And both William Holden and Joe both kind of said, we don't really like having somebody tell us where we're supposed to sit. So they just came and sat with basically the children. And that was the way Joe was. And it was so much fun. He also it's been mentioned before that he was a storyteller. But my husband also was a storyteller. They enjoyed each other very much. And what really got Tom was the fact that Joe would start a shaggy dog story, and very often before he got to the punchline, he would forget the punchline and then laugh at himself more than he would have at the punchline. But he was just a delight to be with for the whole summer, and we loved him. Thank you.
Afternoon. In around 1966, 67, I was doing summer stock in New Mexico, and I decided I'd drive back to New York by stopping at the various regional theaters across the country, which and I arranged ahead of time to audition, etc. And I got as far as Atlanta, and my dear friend Jay Broad, who is in the room, who was artistic director there, took me on for the season. And by a run of amazing circumstances, we did a lampoon sort of variety show lampooning the then Governor Maddox of Georgia, and I came to Broadway for a run. And then I did in the CJ for 2 or 3 years, maybe 4, I'm not certain, and one weekend I got a phone call from Jay saying that he was in the midst of rehearsal for a play that he had written out of the Path Playhouse, where he was artistic director. It was a 2-character play, 2 men, and he lost one of his actors. And if I wasn't doing anything, would I be interested in, taking it on? And I said yes. And he said the other actor is Jose Ferrer. Oh, what do you say? I'd seen Cyrano de Bergerac many years before, and Jose instantly became a total mentor to me in my own mind. I mean, I wanted to be Cyrano. It was just this actor, he had such conviction, imagination, and daring, and graciousness and compassion. I mean, it was just, what can you say? This was an ideal, this man was my idol. And to suddenly have Jay call up and say, you're going to do a play with him, blew me away. And Jay and I met down on the street, on the corner where I lived that night. It was February, it was a slushy, cold, windy, snowy, awful night. We met on the corner, all huddled up. He gave me the script for White Pelicans, and I went back up to my apartment and getting ready to rehearse the next day at 10 o'clock. And the rehearsal was somewhere around the Times Square area in one of those drab, underheated, dusty, dank rehearsal studios at that time. And I arrived at 10 o'clock, having spent the night feverishly trying to find out what it was I was going to be playing and trying to be as prepared as possible. And I found the room where we were rehearsing. It was one of those long, empty rooms. And down at one end was a man wrapped up in a big black coat with a takeout coffee in front of him. And it was Jose. And I had the incredible privilege to have shared the stage with him after we opened up and we ran for 5 or 6 weeks or something like that. That image of him just sitting there waiting to rehearse, that's all, waiting to work. It was so humble and simple. And it's just one of the most meaningful moments ever for me. And I'm just so wonderful that he's being honored and that we're all here to honor him. Thank you.
I come here wearing gently 3 hats. First is the American Theater Wing, because as it was noticed, Jose Ferrer won a lot of awards. He, in fact, won the best lead actor Tony in the very first year of the Tony Awards in 1947, which is pretty extraordinary. He then went on to win others as both a director, and then he was nominated actually as a book writer for a musical, so a multi-talented man he was. My second hat that I wear is as the son of Schuyler Chapin, who was an old friend of of Joe Ferrer, as he said. And I like to think about them as a sort of the non-advertising world madmen of the 1950s. Around New York, clubs, music, passion, they had a good time together. And I know that my father would be thrilled that the stamp is being issued today. The third hat, and the one that probably is a little surprising to all of you, is as the head of the Rodgers and Hammerstein organization, which I am and have been for a number of years, because one of the pieces of the biography of Jose Ferrer, which isn't often mentioned, is his film directing career. And one of the films he directed was the 1962 remake of Rodgers and Hammerstein's State Fair. You may not remember it. It wasn't actually all that good. But it took place in Texas. They moved the State Fair to Texas. It had Pamela Tiffin, it had Anne Margaret, it had Bobby Darin, and it had Pat Boone. And from Pat Boone, Debbie Boone came, who's married to Gabriel Ferrer. And Debbie Boone has become a member of the Rodgers and Hammerstein family because she was extraordinary in a production of The Sound of Music that played here and toured around the country. And I am told, although I was not there, that when that production closed in the last performance that it had in Japan, Gabriel Ferrer dressed up as the widow Schweiger, who wins one of the prizes at the concert at the end of The Sound of Music, as a surprise to his wife to see if she could keep a straight face, and to the audience. So the Ferrer family, the Rodgers and Hammerstein family, the Chapin family, the Steinway family, it's all a family event as far as I'm concerned, and I'm honored to be here, and thank you for honoring him with a stamp.
Everything has been said about my father that needs to be said, but the word that kept coming around and around and around was mentor, mentor, mentor. This is what he did for people he cared about, people he lifted them up, and he made them believe in themselves. My father, if he were here today, would be very, very honored with this. He was an amazing man. There are no words to say what he was to me. By the way, 4 days ago, I found out that my grandfather, who I was named after, Rafael Francisco Ferrer, was a stamp collector, an avid stamp collector. Now, when my father became an actor, he went to his father and he said, well, I digress. My grandfather my grandfather has a stamp collection that was started in 1899 that the family still have to this day. Now, I go back. When my father wanted to become an actor, he came to his father and he said, I want to be an actor. And his father wrote him a letter. And the letter I do not have, but I will paraphrase. The letter said, "It is not the profession I would have chosen for you. It is not a terribly good profession to be in. But if you are going to be an actor, then you must be the actor that Edwin Booth is, that John Drew is, and you must be the best actor you can be." Well, I believe he achieved that. But to bring it all the way around again in a full circle, my grandfather, the stamp collector, would have been very, very proud to have his son on a stamp. And I know that because I, as his son, is very, very, very proud. Thank you very much.
East of the sun and west of the moon, we'll build a dream house of love deep, near to the sun in the day, near to the moon at night. We'll live in a love and a day.
Love will not die.
We'll keep it that way. Above all the stars we'll find the harmony of life to a lovely tune. East of the sun and west of the moon. Dear, east of the sun and west of the moon.
Today, we have a stamp that was honored in Jose Ferrer's honor. This is his daughter, Letty Ferrer. Now tell us a little bit, how are you feeling?
Oh, what! So emotional today. I burst out of tears several times. I had a hard time holding it together. It's the first time all of my siblings and I have been together really since just before my dad died. So it was wonderful seeing everybody.
Now, tell us a little bit about your father.
Oh God, what can I say? As everybody said, he was an incredible human being, most generous. People would stop him on the street. He would give everybody, 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there. Even after doing a Broadway show, the public my daughter's waving at me. I don't know what she was saying. People were always important. He never forgot where he came from. So no matter how tired he was or whatever, he always had time to give people that little extra bit of something, as with the gentleman who said, Mr. Prince, I believe it was, said, walk me to my hotel. That's the kind of guy he was.
And before we end, you also have your mother was very famous, and you're from a very famous school here in New York City, HB Studio. If anybody's out there wanting to pursue the acting facilities, would you want to elaborate a little bit on your mom?
Sure. My mom was the actress Uta Hagen. Excuse me, I'm getting emotional again. She and my late stepfather founded this studio. Herbert started it in 1945, 1950, and we moved down to Bank Street in 58. And from what I'm told, we're still one of the least expensive places around for a class. You can take a class a week for about $22. And our terms are 4 terms, fall, spring, winter, and summer. And we're one of the best. The fact with the economy the way it is and everything going the way it is, and we're still holding on, and we haven't come down. So that's a lot to be said about that, too.
Well, thank you. And now your father will be traveling around the world.
Absolutely, and it's such a great picture of him, and I feel so honored that the United States Postal Service was gracious enough to give us this stamp.
Could you tell us about this moment, a little bit about your father?
My father was a great man. He was a mentor. He touched a lot of people's lives because he cared, and he wanted to give back always. And for the USPS to do this for him, how many people can say, my dad's on a stamp? That's pretty cool, I think.
And he's going to travel the world.
Yeah.
He's going to travel the world.
I think it's wonderful. It's just wonderful.
Is there a special lesson he taught you about acting or the performing arts?
Basically, I think he quoted Spencer Tracy, and he said, remember your lines and don't bump into the furniture. That's about it.
Tell us what it was like working with Jose Ferrer.
Oh, he was such an idol of mine to actually have it turn out that I'm working with him. He was just wonderful. Like I said, we did a 2-character play for 5 or 6 weeks, and it was a joy, to be on stage with him and work with him. Very selfless, generous, wonderful man, and a great talent, a great actor.
Tell us about his work ethic.
He worked, like I was telling you my story tonight, when I went to the first rehearsal, he's just sitting there with his coffee and waiting to rehearse, waiting to work, And that was his most important. He was totally committed and dedicated to his work. Yeah.
And how did you first run into him?
A friend of mine was directing a play, 2-character play, and he lost one of his actors And so my friend called me up and said if was I free to come on in, and they were already 3 or 4 weeks into rehearsal, and I said, of course. And then he said the other actor is going to be Jose Ferrer. That was that was the story.
It's sort of overwhelming, you know, when you're working on it. We've all been working on it. You really don't know how things are going to turn out and whether people are going to respond, whether anybody's going to be as interested as we are, and it's just absolutely wonderful. So proud of the whole thing. So grateful to John here, the manager of the players, and to the lady, Clara Rodriguez, the lady who was instrumental in getting the stamp done, and we just.
Did you have any say on what photograph they used?
Did I have any say? Well, to some extent, yes. Yes. I thought perhaps it should have been something, I thought at the time, perhaps it should have been a photograph from a later photograph. But I think I was wrong, because all the things shown in the movie clips, were from that era. And so it was so easy to identify with and that photograph, as I understand it, came from something called Anything Can Happen with Kim Hunter. And the very interesting thing is that was done in 1950-52 with Kim. The photograph was used from that. And right before my husband died, he was rehearsing with Kim to do another show. It came full circle.
Customers have until June 26, 2012 to obtain the first day of issue postmark by mail. Affix the stamps to envelopes of your choice, address the envelopes to yourself or others, and place them in a larger envelope addressed to Jose Ferrer Stamp, Postmaster, 421 8th Avenue, New York, New York, 10199-9998. After applying the first day of issue postmark, the Postal Service will return the envelopes by mail. There is no charge for the postmark. All orders must be postmarked by June 26, 2012. I'm Kristal Hart reporting from the Players Club here in New York City, and thanks for watching.